back and we are ready to roll. This is episode number 30, another round number 30 episodes. Thank you to everybody who's listened so far. It's been a blast, and we hope to make 30, 40, 50, 60 more coming up here, the Shutdown Inning. Welcome in, Steven Rissotto here, along with Tylor Hall as always. Tyler, what's going on? How's it going?
Hey, I'm doing pretty good, Steven. 30, we made it. And, we just put out our bananas episode and we talked about wanting to get a regular episode in as well. We weren't sure when. And then probably the biggest news of the 2023 baseball season broke last night. And we felt like we had to get together today.
Yeah, and it's in a way kind of ironic because the biggest news of the 2023 baseball season has been the pending free agency of Shohei Ohtani, and we're talking about whether he should be traded, whether he should not be traded. And Shohei, in kind of a very unfortunate way, has kind of you know, overtaken his own headlines with an injury that's very unfortunate. And Shohei Ohtani has been diagnosed with a torn UCL. At the time we're recording this, we do not know the, I guess, prognosis of what's going to happen, if he's going to undergo surgery. I believe he's getting a second opinion, if I'm not mistaken, but just there's no way around it. This is horrendous news.
Yeah, I mean, it's brutal for not just the Angels and Angels fans, but baseball fans everywhere. Because I mean, this guy is a lightning rod for fan attention, rightfully so. And yeah, at time of recording right now, the last report I saw was that he's planning on still hitting at least for the near future. The Angels are off today. It's Thursday, the 24th, and they start a 3-city road trip tomorrow. And he is with the team and planning on hitting in the lineup. So we'll see. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of factors in his mind right now as far as, does he get surgery? If he does, when does he do it? Obviously he probably would want to do that sooner than later if that's where he chooses to go with it, because the longer he waits, the more into next season he'll be getting. He's probably not going to pitch next year at this point, but he could essentially return to hit next year if he wanted to, if he needed surgery and got it done soon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we saw Harper get Tommy John as a hitter right after the World Series last year. I think it was like a few days after the World Series, and he came back in mid-May. So don't think the Angels are going to the World Series. So even if he gets it right after the season starts, he could potentially be ready to hit around opening day if he heals as quickly as Harper. I mean, I think most people were shocked how quick Harper came back, but I mean,
yeah.
So many questions, so many layers, but my gut reaction is just such a bummer for him first and foremost, and then the baseball world after that.
Yeah, and bummer. And the thing about like a torn UCL is, might be able to get away with it if it's like a slight tear. I think Masahiro Tanaka is a good example of this. He had a slight tear in his UCL with the Yankees, and he ended up pitching for a long time with a torn UCL. He rehabbed it, and he ended up having no issues. So it's possible if it's a slight tear, but if you tear a piece of paper, it can't just fix itself on its own. A tear is a tear, and we're hoping that it's not a huge tear for him. And you mentioned Harper. I think Harper now is the standard, or not the standard. I think Harper's a different creature, but Harper is an example of what guys could do if they're determined to come back. And he's a DH. It worked for him. And Ohtani's a DH. It could work for him to come back. But the big thing that everybody's talking about is that this comes at a kind of a weird time with this free agency happening. And everybody's kind of, we were kind of figuring out what he was going to get before this happened. Now I think it's even more of like a puzzling situation, and, with a bunch of numbers, it's musical chairs with numbers.
Yeah, I mean, I think he'll still get pretty close to what a lot of people imagined he'd get. I think there's going to be at least one or two teams that's what it's going to take to get him. He just needs one team to offer it, and I think they will. But
I think so too.
I'm sure there'll be certain stipulations and language in the contract. Maybe, he has a pretty hefty base still, and then he gets bonused off of if he starts a certain number of games on the mound each year. But yeah, this just adds a huge, huge wrinkle to any kind of figure that people were trying to come up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the rehab, like going back to the rehab real quick, and I know we kind of went out of order there, but the rehab, like, he's such a good pitcher. Like he's such a dominant pitcher. He's going to be up there if he's healthy, every year, perennial guy leading like, leaderboards and pitching stats every year, whether it's strikeouts per nine, strikeouts, opponent's batting average. He's going to be up there in everything. And he's just so good to the point where he can't give it up. Like, right. It's not like he could give up pitching. That's like a lot of his value. And granted, guys that hit the way he hits, they're going to get paid regardless. He would get at least 300 million, no doubt about it, if he was just hitting, and just the aura of him and the mythical, figure that he is. But like rehabbing with pitching, and trying to be in the lineup at the same time and trying to nurse your injury and trying to rehab from your injury, it's tough. And my main hope from this is that nothing happens with the pitching future. And I think the best thing to happen, in a weird way, the best injury to happen might be the UCL, because we know what it takes to get that done. He's had it before. It's a rather, granted his second one, it's a rather, well-known surgery for surgeons to, it's successful. That's what I'm saying. It's a successful operation.
It's got a solid success rate.
So if I'm looking at any silver lining, and it is tough to find one, that is that he won't have to give up pitching because it's a surgery that has been deemed successful. And I wouldn't put anything against him. I think he's still going to get paid, and a team probably could even overpay for him to the price that maybe he would have gotten before this, just so they could have him on their team. So I don't know how much it affects with the contract, but it's an interesting situation for sure.
Yeah, I mean, even if he opts for surgery, like you said, if he was like a 3 or 4 start, number 3, number 4 starter, then it's like, yeah, you had a great run. But he is like, I mean, he was in the conversation for the pitching Triple Crown earlier this year.
Just can't give it up. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like even if you sign him, and as long as he isn't, trigger shy, and I doubt he will be, cool. Get that Tommy John, take 2024 off of the mound, and then hope to bounce back in 25 on the mound. And then as a consolation prize, you have a guy that might hit 50 home runs at the plate in 2024. So, yeah. I mean,
and it's a whole lot better than having him pitch the first year, or pitch the first 5 years and then deal with like elbow issues for multiple seasons, right? Like get it out of the way. We're hoping that this could be, maybe not a one and done thing, but at least we'll solve the issue of pain that he's been dealing with. So, at the end of the day, these contracts, like nobody's paying for the last 3 years of it in any long-term contract, or, they're paying for it, but nobody's expecting anything in those last 3 years. We saw it with Pujols. We saw it with now Cabrera. Those last 3 years are pretty much a crapshoot of these deals. So I think if he's setting himself up to have a successful last 3 years, and I think doing it now could be the best possible scenario if you're going to do it at all.
Yeah, I think, you'd mentioned once you tear a piece of paper, it doesn't just heal itself. If he opts not for surgery, it's always going to be kind of in the back of his mind and whichever team he signs with's mind, like, okay, when is it going to get worse? When is it going to flare up? And when are we going to lose him? So I think probably best case for him would be to just go under the knife and start that process now. But that's easy for us to say here at the Shutdown Inning when it's not our arm and not our next 10 or 12 years of our future.
Yeah. And also for a team that's trying to invest in him. I mentioned like I wouldn't bet against them, but if you're a team trying to invest in him and you understand the work ethic that this guy has, like there's no fingers pointing to anything other than he'll get back strong, right? Like there's no questions about work ethic. There's no questions about whether this guy could, take time off of rehab. There's no negative questions about Shohei Ohtani at all. That's why as tough as this is for him, and like he will lose money on it. I don't think a lot. I think you agree there. I don't think a lot. He will though. I wouldn't put it past him to come back stronger from this. That's just the type of competitor he is. And who knows what the implications are, but I don't think it will be much.
Yeah, I mean, one of the quotes I saw from the Angels GM when, this news broke pretty late last night was, if anyone can bounce back from it, it's Ohtani. So, his fingers crossed that it's quick and complete for him.
Yeah. And the double whammy too with Trout.
Yeah, I was about to say, but then also when it rains, it pours. Mike Trout back on the injured list for them as well after one game back from his wrist injury. I mean, I feel like for them at this point, you might as well shut him down and protect your future. I don't know why you'd unless they somehow go on a run without Ohtani on the mound and Trout all together, and they're within, striking distance of a wild card by mid-September when he's able to come back. I mean, do you bring him back? I don't know. I mean, it's been
Yeah.
a pretty rough month for the Angels after they gutted their farm system to make a run. Those moves didn't really pan out as well as they had planned, and now they'll have to figure out their future without Ohtani and Trout now for the rest of this year. But
Yeah, when it rains, it pours. And, the Trout one, as for Trout, I think he's going down, and he might have already been down this. Like, this might have already been something that he's been attached to. But for me, he's going down like the Mickey Mantle, like what could have been type thing. And I say that, and granted, he's an all-time great in my mind. Like, if he retires today, he's going into the Hall of Fame. He's one of the best players of all time. I don't think that's contested. But the reason I'm saying he's still a what if, even with all the success, is because I feel like he's missed time in recent years, right? At
yeah,
pretty much every season. There's still the what if, like what could he have done? It's kind of like the Griffey thing too. Like Ken Griffey Jr. was amazing, 600 homers, but there's still like a what if he didn't get hurt in Cincinnati. Like, could he have broken the home run record before Bonds did, or after Bonds? Could have broken Bonds' record by then, I guess. It would have been. So the same thing kind of goes for Trout, kind of like Mickey Mantle. Like, what could have been with Mickey Mantle if he had two good legs, So it's
yeah,
disappointing. And the wrist injury, like historically, guys talk about it. Like the wrist, it's full of a ton of tendons, a ton of nerves. Like, it's not easy to come back strong from a wrist injury. And Trout, hopefully he gets back. And I think his days of being a center fielder are over. I think if anything, he's going to be a corner outfielder from here on out. Probably should have happened a few years ago, and also probably a prime example of a guy to be traded at some point. I don't know when, but it's disappointing, and I hope this isn't the last of Mike Trout we see in an Angels uniform. But yeah, double whammy, not fun.
yeah. I mean, like you said, it's crazy to think of guys like Mantle and Griffey and Trout as a what if, because I mean, holy crap, they're some of the best outfielders of all time. But when you have guys that miss time, and like I'm just looking at Trout, and he hasn't really played close to a full season since 2019. So I mean, pandemic year he played 53 of the 60.
Oh, I was going to
So,
ask about that. Yeah.
but 2021 36 games, last year 119, this year only 82, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's where that number stops. So just tough time to be an Angels fan and to just for baseball, because those are two names that every baseball fan knows, and now they're both on the shelf, at least in some capacity, with Ohtani at least attempting to hit still for now. But
Yeah, and you know what? It is good that Otani's still able to hit, because I think he's having a massive offensive year. He's having a great pitching year too. But
well, what was nuts is like the inning before he left the game with elbow soreness yesterday, he hit a home run.
yeah, yeah. So that adds to like the mythical. Like, this guy could probably play. That's the whole what you just said right there. That's the whole reason why I'm not worried about the procedure. Like, he could beat Harper. He could.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting thing. But yeah, hopefully all goes well. And if I'm him and I want to keep playing through the rest of the year, probably should. But the minute the season ends, maybe it would be best to. And I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to act like I am. But it might be best to get the procedure in the early weeks of October.
Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so quick speedy recovery for Ohtani, hopefully. But we just talked about some of the greats of all time, and so I think you said this was a Twitter trend last week or something, Steven.
Yeah, so I
Dream
saw it on
infields.
MLB Network, and on MLB Central there was it was on one of those baseball accounts. I don't know if you follow like the '70s baseball, or there's some accounts like that. They all kind of
Mm-hmm.
mirror each other. It gets annoying, so I only follow a few of them. But the one that I did follow, it said like, "What's your dream infield?" And Mark DeRosa was kind of quote tweeting it. There was other ex big leaguers that were quote tweeting it, and it found its way on MLB Network. And I thought, that would be cool if we could kind of do our dream infield. And obviously, there's a few ways to go about it. We could go all time. We could have the black and white guys in there, which nobody likes to do. We kind of keep it in the modern era. But I figured it would be cool if we did just the ones that we kind of remember, right? The ones that we remember watching play that have played in our lifetime. So Tyler, obviously would then go pick out Eddie Matthews because he's that old. He would pick out the Sandy Koufax. No, just kidding. So I figured we'd do it like a dream infield type of thing. So yeah, who do you got? Who's on your dream infield?
Yeah, I mean, should I just run through
Yeah, Honus Wagner, Ty Cobb, who else?
Right. My dad's best friend Lou Gehrig is on here. No,
Oh, he's taking straight. He's listening to. I know he is.
Sorry, Dad. Yeah, so I'll just go through, like we did, like Steven said, we decided to keep it to guys that we've seen play, and so a lot of mine are from when I was a kid, so mostly before Steven's time, but I went with Pudge behind the plate. I'll just run through it, then I'll kind of revisit a couple guys maybe. The big hurt, Frank Thomas at first, Jeff Kent at second. I'm going Cal Ripken at third, so I can put Derek Jeter at short. So, Pudge, I grew up as a catcher. I always loved watching defensive catchers, and Pudge was obviously an amazing hitter as well. But, he was amazing behind the plate. He was Patrick Bailey-esque, if you will. And, that my catcher's mitt that I still have to this day from when I was in high school is his model of catcher's mitt. So that catcher's mitt you heard us talk about in the Bananas episode.
Stilts catcher's mitt.
The Stilts catcher's mitt is a Pudge model. Frank Thomas was always one of my favorite players growing up as a favorite non-giant. He just always kind of quiet, but did everything the right way, and it was always just fun to watch. I went with Jeff Kent just because I feel like, he doesn't get the due that, I think that him kind of not even sniffing the Hall of Fame is a joke. Yeah, and when he was on the Giants, I really wasn't even that big of a Kent guy because I was a Barry guy, and they kind of butted heads. I rooted for him to do well, but I wasn't like, I love Jeff Kent. But I mean, most power production of any second baseman ever. And really, I think people kind of underestimate his glove. He was nothing special, but he was also, serviceable. It's not like he was a defensive liability out there for most of his career. Ripken, I've talked about him quite a bit on the pod. He's like, I have a painting of him breaking the consecutive game streak above my desk. My favorite non-giant ever, class act, the Iron Horse. And talk about a guy who did it the right way. That's Ripken. And and then Derek Jeter, the other guy who did everything the right way. Captain of the Yankees. Never heard really a bad story about him, except for maybe an alleged gift basket that he would leave. But everyone knows Derek Jeter, whether you like the Yankees or not, and it's hard to hate on the guy. People like to just hate on him because he was in pinstripes, I think, but yeah, hard to knock his career output as well. So that's my infield. Any feedback?
Yeah, no, good list. I knew the Ripken. Obviously, I know your love affair with Cal Ripken, but I do like the Jeff Kent shout out, and I do think he's vastly underrated. And no second baseman has gotten near, like maybe Cano, I guess to an extent, but no second baseman has kind of gotten near his production since. Altuve, kind of a different player, right? Not the power guy that Kent is. But good list. I like the Pudge shout out too. Again, Piazza could have easily been in his place. Why? What's the decision? Well, Dodgers, is that it?
Yeah, Dodgers, and I don't have a Mike Piazza catcher's mitt. He was I feel like he was all bat, not as much glove. I felt like Pudge is better all around. But obviously Piazza, he's probably the best offensive catcher of all time.
Yeah. No other questions though for me.
And I really loved his stint with the Marlins for Piazza.
Yeah, exactly. And you mentioned you don't know a lot of people that hate Derek Jeter. I think the Marlins fans might not hate him, but maybe dislike him a little bit.
I saw they were complaining that he got rid of the home run statue. I saw that thing in person.
Jeffrey Loria.
Yeah, Loria said that he ruined the stadium. Dude, I saw that thing in person because it's still right outside the stadium. That thing is ugly. He did them a favor. if you need a home run celebration, do something different besides the home run sculpture statue thing.
Yeah.
It was, I know you've seen pictures of it. I took a picture of it. I'll send it to you. It was gnarly, man.
Yeah. And, I understand the desire to want to have like a local artist get in the mix when you're building a stadium, but at some point you got to like read the room.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
good on Derek for kicking that thing out. It will live in infamy. And also Derek Jeter, star of The Other Guys, which did you ever get a chance to finish it?
I did. I did. I enjoyed it. It was funny, man. I
Should have
took
shot Jeter or should have
yeah,
shot A-Rod.
yeah, I should have shot A-Rod. Shout out to Drew Dowd for kind of turning me on to it. I know you guys had both seen it. What is it? It's 9:15. Everyone have a great day. Or is it 9:30?
Yeah.
So yeah. Should have shot A-Rod.
Yeah. Jeter's a biracial angel. Yeah, love Jeter. Good pick. For my infield, I went with Posey, and Posey, I think still to this day, he leads all catchers in WAR. This is amazing, by the way. Posey's entire career, he was the leader in catcher. So from 2010, might have even been from '09 to 2021, the era in which he played, he had the best Fangraphs WAR in baseball for catchers who played most of their games behind the plate. And the crazy thing about that is that he only played like 45 games in 2011. He missed the entire 2020 season, and he kind of nickled and dimed in 2017, 18, 19. Right? He at one of those seasons he had the hip injury, that surgery that ended his season. Um, so much missed time for Posey, but still, when he played, he was the best catcher in baseball, and that is completely my era. Best catcher. He's on the Giants Mount Rushmore, I think, 100%. He's got 3 championships. He's got every accolade in the book. He's a future Hall of Famer. There's no doubt about that. So he's my catcher. Molina's an honorable mention. Could have easily gone there too. Good choices all around. First base, I could have gone I could have gone Freddie Freeman or Paul Goldschmidt, but I went Miguel Cabrera, because I remember how amazing his kind of prime seasons were in 2011, 2012, 13. He was so feared. And I remember losing my marbles when he was facing Sergio Romo, in the World Series, but just an animal offensively. He's an all-time great when it comes to right-handed hitters. Another guy who's going down as one of the best of his generation for sure, and of all time. So I have him at first. My second baseman is going to be Altuve. Not a lot of options. Could have gone with Cano, but I think Altuve's kind of been the consistency, the model of consistency. And say what you want about the cheating scandal. I think he's a performer even without that stuff. And he's, one of the best players in the game when he's healthy. So I have him at second base. And then at third base, I have Nolan Arenado. It was neck and neck between Arenado and Machado. I went with Arenado because, he hits too. And the Coors Field effect, it's tough playing at Coors, but it's also easy playing at Coors. Machado hits too, but some of the offensive seasons that Arenado had were insane, with the unbelievable streak of Gold Glove and Platinum Glove runs. So he's my third baseman. And also, by the way, just a grinder. I heard Mark DeRosa talk about him when he had him with Team USA, talking about how he's in the cage, at all times, picking brains of guys. So shout out to Arenado. And then Francisco Lindor at shortstop. Could have gone Jeter, but I kind of saw him at the tail end. There has not been like Tulowitzki I saw a little bit of. But Lindor is kind of the guy that stands out as probably the best shortstop that I've seen full time watching baseball. So yeah, that's kind of my infield. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big Arenado guy. He's won a Gold Glove every year he's played, which is just insane. Starting with his rookie year, he's won a Gold Glove every year. He's 10 deep now, and I don't see how he doesn't win it this year as well. So, I really like that pick, and like you said, he's done it with the bat. He's led the league in home runs a number of times. Really like the Cabrera pick. I mean, I think he's got 4 batting titles while hitting 500 home runs is just insane. I mean, he had the Triple Crown, which we hadn't seen in decades. I think it was how long was it since Williams? I think Williams was the last one, right before Cabrera.
It might have been
So,
Yastrzemski, I
oh, it
think.
might have been Yaz. It might have been Yaz. But yeah, I mean, either way, a long time. And then, of course, gotta give the shout out to Buster. I mean, like you mentioned, he's got the accolades. I don't think people realize that he's basically anything you could win as an offensive player, he's won. He's gotten Rookie of the Years, MVPs, Gold Gloves, Silver Sluggers, 2 Comeback Player of the Year awards, I believe.
Mhm.
I mean, you name it, the guy's won it, and then to top it off, he's won 3 championships. So solid list, man. Maybe we'll do outfield next or something.
Yeah, that would be fun. And also, like looking at Cabrera again, 2011 led the American League in batting average, and on base percentage. Then the next year in the Triple Crown year, obviously batting average and also slugging and OPS, but did not lead it in on base percentage. And then the next year in 2013 led it in all 4 categories: batting average, on base, slugging, OPS. So just an incredible stretch for Cabrera where he was just doing everything right. And then it kind of started going downhill once he hit his mid 30s, and his legs kind of, didn't really have his legs from under him. And he's been dealing with lower body stuff. But yeah, it's going to be a different baseball without Cabrera because he's retiring at the end of this season. So
Yeah,
yeah, that
it's
was
been
good. That
kind
was
of
yeah.
it's been kind of cool to watch his little farewell tour now that he's kind of at the tail end. And I also saw, I think he's like a couple doubles shy of Hank Aaron on the all-time doubles list
That's
now. So
insane.
yeah,
Yeah. That's insane. Yeah, and especially considering Hank Aaron, like I forgot who told me this, but I think Hank Aaron has like 7 miles more of total bases than the next guy. Or it's like,
holy
yeah, it's weird. It's some weird stat like that where geography is included, but I'll have to double check that. Um, but yeah, so
yeah,
yeah, we should do outfield next. I think that would be fun, and then also rotations and bullpens. That would be cool.
yeah. We'll just keep building our dream teams.
Yes, yes.
Uh,
Do you want to introduce this next topic? Because I know you kind of brought it to my attention, and I did see a little bit of it, and I think it's disappointing. But yeah,
yeah, so I wanted to talk about MLB relocation and how it's kind of become a hot topic, not just with the A's, but there's about a third of baseball right now has kind of teased that relocation is potentially on the table for them. And shout out to my buddy Max, who sent me a nice video that Brody Brazil put out, where he called it an epidemic. As far as teams saying they need to relocate, it's kind of a lot of it centers around them asking their local municipalities for money and whatnot. But it's really bad for baseball, and it's kind of fitting that Max sent this to me because he's my buddy who I've mentioned a few times, who grew up in Montreal as an Expos fan, and then they moved. They were the last team to move. I think they're the only team to move in like 40 years. And now we have a lot of teams on that doorstep, or at least talking about it. So yeah, that's why I decided to bring it to the table, Steven. The teams that are at least kind of broaching the subject, or at least kind of using it as potential leverage, are the A's, obviously, the Orioles, Brewers, White Sox, Angels, Royals, Diamondbacks, and Rays have all had discussions relatively related to potential relocation this year.
yeah, like what the hell? That was my response to this. Like, what the hell? Why? Like the fact that, and I do honestly blame the A's in a lot of ways, but I can't just blame them. I think this is something that the A's just kind of opened the door to. It's kind of like, where people have built up thoughts, right? And then when someone actually says it, it gives the other people the okay to say it too. Kind of like
Yeah.
what we see in politics like recently. But that's kind of what the A's did. I feel like, they flirt with moving. We've known this, and we've kind of known about the other teams to some extent. We've heard about Tampa for years and their ballpark stuff. We've heard about a little tiny bit about Milwaukee with their stadium issues and how their stadium might not be feasible. But like I might like the Angels, like the White Sox, like there's so much history in Chicago for Jerry Reinsdorf, the owner of the Bulls and the White Sox, who should know better. Like, I mean, I don't understand. Like, nobody's losing finances, I don't think. If the Brewers need a ballpark, I'm sure like they could get that figured out. I don't think relocation needs to be in the mix. But I'm stunned that this is even being talked about because there's fans that support these teams that are from these cities. And, it's so important to them, and getting a team taken away from them, like we're seeing it in Oakland. And granted, like Oakland is a splendid fan base, right? But I think if this would ever happen in Chicago, the fan base that the White Sox have would blow what the A's have going on, the movement that they've started, out of proportion, just because of the history that's in Chicago and everything. You can't just like act like relocation is just a tactic and float it out there publicly, because it's such a messy and complicated idea, and it sets a bad precedent in my mind. It really does. And I'm sad that these greedy owners are floating these ideas, and it's dangerous. It really is dangerous. And I hope some of these cities like Nashville and Portland, they deserve to get their own team, not some stupid billionaire and their team that has been somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree. I think I've been talking about expansion for a while now. So, expand and get some of these cities that deserve a team without having to, steal it from another fan base. But
Like
yeah, it's just,
Vegas
yeah,
deserved their own team, not the A's.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, just to, I was talking to my buddy Max after he sent me that video, and I'll put it up, or maybe we can tweet it out from the
We'll put it in the
podcast.
description. Yeah.
But he just said, and it's an amazing grift of publicizing player salaries and let the public fixate on that while they quietly ask for billions in handouts. And this is kind of what we've talked about it a little bit in the past episodes, where like baseball doesn't really market their game very well. They do a good job demonizing their own players, which are who makes the game and brings the fans in. And no team in baseball is not making money. Every team is worth at least $1 billion. Mm-hmm. So them crying poor and it's just like, no, you just need to maybe pocket a little less for a while if you want to update your stadium or get a new one built.
And also, like, Major League Baseball is like, they're bragging about these unbelievable attendance numbers, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
like,
attendance is up, but then they say they're struggling. It's like,
yeah, and I think I do actually believe them. I think attendance is up, and that's a good thing. But also at the same time, if you're an organization, you can't complain about money if the league is saying that attendance is up. And baseball's in a great spot. We got international players all over the place. We got money coming in. We got players that are popular and likable, and the game's changing. We're adapting to the younger fan, but we're losing money. Like it's a double standard, I feel. And we need one message from somebody to tell the truth, but we're not going to get that because there's money involved.
yeah.
But
yeah, I mean, definitely interesting. I feel like it's a topic we have to at least broach, and hopefully it all kind of dissipates a little bit and we don't have a quarter of baseball thinking they need to move. That's what's crazy to me. And then, I see wanting a little bit from a city or a county or whatever, because they benefit from having a team as well. But most of that money that comes in is going to go to these ball clubs, and they don't have a shortage of money. They just don't want to take it off of, lining their pockets. They want to keep as much of it in there as possible. So it's just really sucks. And like you said, a lot of these fan bases are huge, and
these are legit cities like Chicago, Phoenix. Like, say what you want about Phoenix, but Phoenix is like a rising, like Arizona's a rising state. A lot of people are moving there. They're starting to see the intrigue in Arizona, and Phoenix like is a good sports, area. And Milwaukee, good sports town. Like there's so many. You've been to Milwaukee, right? You could probably vouch.
Yeah, I mean, it's an awesome town. They love their team. They're tailgating on Tuesday nights for a Brewers game. And I'm not talking like a couple guys out there with a barbecue. There was like lines, in between cars, all full of barbecues. Like they're out there supporting their team. The Orioles are on here, one of the best young teams in baseball. Yeah. Camden Yards is a gem, and somehow that's not good enough. I just don't. I think part of it too was bizarre, as at least a Giants fan looking at this, is some of these teams have stadiums that are more or about the same age as Oracle, maybe even a little younger in some of them. But the Giants, Oracle, at least to me, when I walk in there, it still feels brand new. I know I've been there for 25 years now almost, but they take such good care of it, and they did it right. And so just to see some of these stadiums saying that they don't work and they need to a new stadium or they need to move is just outlandish to me.
Yeah, you know what? If you buy like let's say a car, right? And you have that car for a long time and that car falls apart, right? And you have to go in every once in a while for a maintenance. And if you're not going in every now and then to get your oil changed or your maintenance, like that car is going to break down on you. So eventually, to some capacity, it's user error on some of these ballparks. Like if you're the Milwaukee Brewers and you get this brand new stadium, and I don't know what's happening in Milwaukee, but they're complaining about the stadium. But I'd imagine, I would think that some things have just been disregarded the past few years. Like some issues that have come up have just been ignored for a stadium to get to the point where MLB is saying that it's unplayable, right?
Yeah.
So at some point, if you own something, you have to take some risk, or if you use something, in some case, some teams are paying lease for their stadiums or whatever, you have to take responsibility that you messed up, right? You kind of, ran it into the ground. But at Camden Yards, like, what are the Orioles doing to ruin that place? What are the Brewers doing to ruin, I know it's called something else, but I still call it Miller Park.
Miller
But
Park.
um, you know, take care of your stadiums, please, so we don't have to get to this point. And kudos to Oracle for taking care of it. Like all these Dodger Stadium even does upgrades to get better. Like even the oldest stadium, Fenway, Wrigley, they're still all in use. What are we doing to where we have this technology to make stadiums better and we're not using it? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, and didn't the Royals just do some upgrades to Kauffman like within the last few years too?
Yeah,
I
so now
mean,
they're looking for a stadium away from everything with shout out to Uncle Pat, who is like very familiar with the Kansas City area. He said that there'd be no transportation, like in terms of like public transportation. And if you're building a stadium, that's like the number one thing now. That's what we're
yeah,
trending towards as society, and you need it. So I'm just down on that whole thing. And like Tampa Bay is the only team out of that bunch that in that video that I kind of thought, okay, the ballpark's in a weird spot. We've been hearing complaint for years. If they want to move somewhere else in Florida, like that's fine with me. But all the other ones, what's your excuse? So
yeah,
lame.
yeah. I mean, hopefully the A's or hopefully the A's don't even move, but I feel like that's almost written already. But hopefully these teams can just sort it out and take some accountability and not screw their fan bases.
Yeah. Takes so much time to build these fan bases, especially if you're Arizona and Tampa Bay and you're the expansion teams and what was it, 97? Um, you know, so much time to build those fan bases. You got a good team on the field, both of them do, and now you just want to, let it all go. It's lame.
Yeah.
Speaking of those teams though,
Yeah, speaking of those teams, like half of those teams are in the playoff race right now.
good
So
segue.
they've got some good ball in front of them right now. So yeah, before we headed to 3 up, 3 down, we wanted to talk about the current playoff races. Anywhere you want to start in particular, Steven?
Yeah, well, Milwaukee's in first place, Baltimore's in first place, Tampa Bay's in second place, and all these teams are doing so well. No, I think the place to start right now is like I mean everything's pretty much solved in terms of the division races, and maybe the Cubs sneak in there, after a few head-to-head games against Milwaukee, but it's the National League wildcard race for me. That's the number one thing. There's so many teams involved in it, whether it be the Giants, whether it be the Cubs, the Phillies, the Reds, the Diamondbacks, the Marlins are in striking distance. It's a 6-team race, so
Yeah,
that's what I'm looking at.
you have 6 teams within 2 games of a playoff spot. Obviously, there's 3 spots to go around there, but yeah, that's a tight race right now. I mean, it really is going to be, I think, just who can get hot in September. I know that's pretty cliche when you're talking playoff races, but that's what it's going to take. You're going to need at least 1 or 2 of these teams are going to get hot and separate from the group, and then we'll probably end up with a little 4-way battle for that 3rd spot. But yeah, I mean, the Diamondbacks, they floundered for a little while and they're back in it now. They're 8-2 in their last 10. They're half game out with along with the Giants there. And the Marlins somehow floating, no pun intended, with them being a fish. But 2 games over 500 still, and a couple games out. So I think that's definitely an interesting race that, like we talked about a couple episodes ago, that the scoreboard watching is in full effect right now.
Yeah, I scoreboard watch quite a bit. I always look at the standings at the end of the night, and Like, who would have thought that in like going to the American League here? Who would have thought that Houston has that third wild card spot? Like, who would have thought that going into the season that they're like, well, they're basically tied with Seattle for the second one, but like, I would not have thought that Texas would outplay them to the point where Houston has the third wild card spot in the American League. That's wild to me. Some of those teams are really good, and Seattle kind of turned the heat on there. Like the last few months, they kind of got
Yeah.
off to a rough start. We talked about how disappointed. I think I put them on a down one week, but
Yeah, they
definitely
were. And,
cool.
I had selected them to win the West this year, and they weren't even in the playoff conversation, and, 4, 5, 6 weeks ago. Now they're sitting in a wild card spot. And what's kind of sneaky is both those teams, Seattle and Houston, are only a game and a half behind the Rangers now, too, where the Rangers had kind of created some separation, and they're not playing bad ball by any stretch. They're 72 and 54. I guess they are on a 6-game losing streak, but they're having a very solid season still. So the AL West is kind of turning into what we thought the East might be in the American League.
Yeah, and New York, the Yankees, they're 1-9 in their last 10.
Oof. Yeah.
Um,
0.3% chance to make the playoffs. But yeah, there was at one point we thought 4 teams, we thought the East was going to get their division winner and all 3 wild card spots. Right now they're only getting 2 teams in. The 2 teams right on the doorstep of the wild card are the Jays, a game out, and Boston 3.5. But still, how many games we have left? About 35, I'd say, ish, depending on the schedule for each team.
Yeah,
And
about that.
so, yeah, I'm surprised. The Mariners rotation has been pretty banged up this year, and they've put it together. I'll leave a little bit left on the Mariners bone there because I know we're going to get to a piece of that here in a second. But yeah, I think it's definitely the wild cards. There's a lot of separation in some of these divisions. The Dodgers aren't going to get caught. The Braves aren't going to get caught. Twins probably won't get caught. The rest of the teams that are leading their division, if they fall out of the division lead, they'll probably still hold on to a wild card spot. So,
yeah, I agree. I'm looking forward to watching the scoreboard and seeing how the new schedule kind of affects the races in September. But I'm looking forward to it. And you brought up the Mariners. That leads us into our ups and downs for the week. And I have the ups, so I'll start off with the ups. And a big part of the Mariners' recent success has been Julio Rodriguez, who at one point was 17 for 22 across 4 games. So now I was at an A's game recently, and I was with a buddy of mine. I was telling Tyler this earlier, and when he told me 17 for 22, I had to tell him to stop playing because he could do that. He could try to go 17 for 22. Rodriguez, a young guy. He's going to play for a long time. He could try to do that again, and he will not come close. That will never happen in his career again. It will never happen again, like, in the near future. That's just an insane run. 17 for 22. Like, I feel like that's insanity.
yeah, we did the math right before we hopped on. I think I said that was what, 772 clip. Obviously hitters are always trying to get hits, but like you said, we might not see a stretch like that by anybody ever again. That's just nuts to think about. And it's not like, you might have seen it, a guy's reached base 17 out of 22 times back when like Bonds was getting walked all the time or something, but we're talking hits. 17 hits in 4 games is ridiculous. And so 17 for 22, that he's obviously, I think you and I are both big Julio Rodriguez fans. We think he's one of those faces of baseball that the league should be doing better to publicize or get out there. And he's a big reason why the Mariners are now in a wild card spot.
Yeah, without a doubt. And he's having a great year this year. He had a great year last year, winning Rookie of the Year, but I'm still waiting for him to have that monster, like the Trout-esque, type of MVP season. And I wouldn't put it past him. He's going to be in that conversation for a long time. He'll be at the top of the preseason betting odds for MVP for a while. And yeah, no doubt.
It's not crazy to think he's only going to get better for at least a few years, and he's only 22. So, he's not even sniffing his prime yet. So he's just getting started. So definitely interested in seeing how his career progresses.
Makes me feel good about myself because I'm 21. That means I'm not even sniffing my prime yet, according to you. So
If you were a Major League Baseball player, but
that's true. That's true. I probably already peaked.
but
Anyhow,
hey, no, you're on the way up, man. Speaking
um,
really quick, I meant to bring this up at the beginning of the episode. Speaking of Steven on the way up, Bill King scholarship recipient. Congratulations, man. This had to get that in there. I wanted to do it up top and I forgot.
thank you. I appreciate that. Bill King was quite the legendary figure in Bay Area sports. He transcended a lot of sports listeners for a long time, and it's great to get that honor. And thank you to the Oakland A's for that. That was pretty awesome, and it was a cool night. They gave me some free tickets, chilled with some friends and family, and watched the A's lose in the later innings.
Two questions before we get to up number two. Did you
Yes.
get to keep the gigantic check?
So it was funny when I got down to the person who was the representative for the A's told me that she was going to come get me in my seat at about 5:30. So I was sitting there and she came and got me and she had the check on her back. She was dragging it with her and she's like, "Come on, let's go." So we went down. They gave me a jersey that I got to keep with my name on it. And the check was a whiteboard. And the minute I heard that it was a whiteboard, I was like, I'm not getting this thing back. So they're 100% reusing that. Probably already have reused it, but I'm fine with that because the money's been deposited for weeks. So
there you go. Well, that kind of answered my second question. Was I know you got to keep the jersey. Was there a name on the back? So it's a Risotto jersey.
It was a Risotto jersey, yes. And
any number or just the name?
23 for I guess 2023. So
nice.
I consider myself a Michael Jordan disciple. So and I see a lot of similarities between us. I'm just kidding. Let's get to
no, but yeah,
two.
but no, like I said, you're on the way up. Congratulations, man. That was awesome and very well deserved.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all the messages that came in that night. Pretty awesome. And what else is pretty awesome is the performance from Kerry Carpenter since we last recorded. Kerry Carpenter in his last 12 games, 8 home runs in his last 12 games for the Tigers, 16 RBIs, so nearly half of the runs batted in have come via the long ball. That's another stretch who, again, Kerry Carpenter, a guy that we don't know too much about, but he now is putting together a pretty good year. 20 home runs on the year, a former 19th round pick by the Tigers in 2019 out of Florida, out of Virginia Pauley Institute and State University. So congrats to him on that monster week. But we overlooked the Tigers, and this guy we don't know too much about.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, a lot of people don't know too much about him. I only have really known about him for about the last week or so since he started to kind of take off. But these teams like the Tigers who are kind of in a rebuild, you need a few Kerry Carpenters to help get back to relevance. So, like similar to Rodriguez, he might not have another stretch where he hits 8 home runs in 12 games, but hopefully it's the start of a good career for him. I think he's in his second year, still a young guy. So
yeah, second year. And he's got a 900 OPS in 285 at bats. So when you have that, you're looking like a pretty long-term piece in Detroit. So good for Kerry. Number 3, I'm going to go with Kyle Harrison of the San Francisco Giants. And Kyle Harrison, I'm giving him the up because not only did he make his big league debut, but he stuck with the process and he stuck through a season where, it was being flirted with the idea that he'd be up in April. Then it got pushed to May. Then it got pushed to June. He was supposed to be up in July. He got through a hamstring injury, and here he is in August up with the San Francisco Giants, regarded as the top pitching prospect since Madison Bumgarner. And patience is a big thing in sports, and I think Kyle Harrison displayed a lot of patience. He's a guy who probably could have cracked the opening day roster. He was probably poised for it, but here he is finally getting his shot with the Giants and going to be a big part of their playoff run. So cool to see the De La Salle kid from the East Bay kind of get that gig.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just turned 22. He wasn't facing a slouch of a lineup either. I think his 2 earned runs were on a Bryce Harper home run. So not too bad to say you gave up your first career home run to a multi-time MVP. But But, I think a big thing for him is kind of getting stretched out. He never threw a lot of pitches or a lot of innings in a single outing in Sacramento. I was happy they gave him the start, not throw out an opener and then let him come in the second. I think it's he's going to be a part of the rotation for a long time, so let him kind of keep the starter's role and kind of his pregame routine. But control's been kind of an issue for him through the minors. He only had one walk. He was getting squeezed quite a bit too. If you were able to watch the game, he was getting squeezed, and then the strike zone seemed to get a little bigger once he was out of the game. But solid first outing for Kyle Harrison, and as Giants fans, and a lot of our listeners are Giants fans, got to be excited about having Harrison as a 22-year-old in the Giants rotation.
Yeah, really good stuff. A long-awaited debut. Alrighty, for the downs, Tylor Hall.
Man. Let's end it on a high note, everybody. Yeah, we got the 3 downs now for 3 up, 3 down. The first
Start
one,
doing the downs first.
right? The 3 up, 3 down, but we'll start with the downs. First down, I'm going to go with Steven Strasburg. He announced, I think it was today, it might have been yesterday, he's retiring. It's not necessarily a down on him. It's kind of a down on kind of that what could have been, World Series MVP, #1 pick. He was kind of a poster child coming out of even all the way back to high school. Kind of one of the final ties to Tony Gwynn in Major League Baseball too, because Gwynn managed him in San Diego at San Diego State. So just kind of a bummer to see that he kind of couldn't stay healthy. So it's kind of a down, just that we didn't get to see a full Steven Strasburg. I think you're a big Strasburg guy, right, Steven?
Yeah, I do like Strasburg a lot, and when healthy, one of the biggest stuff guys that I've seen. Like the big breaking ball, and like he worked really hard to stay healthy, and it just never was something he could do throughout the course of 162. And I'm disappointed that this is ending up like kind of a Prince Fielder situation where he can't finish his career. And at this point, it's just trying to live as a functional human. Like, you don't want anything from your baseball career to carry over to your post life. And when it gets hard, and I don't know what his personal case is, but when it gets hard doing simple things, like care for your family or being around friends, like that's probably when the right time to step away is. And prioritizing that health is important. So hopefully he's okay. Hopefully none of that will affect him. Definitely sad the way things happen, but still, if you look at the #1 overall picks that are starting pitchers, he is one of the best in a weird way.
Yeah.
So we might not think of it, but congrats on a great career. But I do agree that the way it ended is not ideal.
Yeah, I mean, still an awesome career, just like I said, what could have been. But his last full season in 2019, he led the league in innings pitched, and then obviously was World Series MVP, got his big contract extension after that year, and he only threw just over 30 innings for the rest of his career after 2019. So yeah, that'll be the first down. Second one, I feel like we just have to mention it. Wander Franco. I mean, what the hell are you thinking, man? He's the reason I'm including him here is now he's officially on administrative leave with Major League Baseball. So it's very similar to what Trevor Bauer was on through his whole ordeal a couple years ago. And, he's a what could have been now, but in a whole different light for a much different reason. But yeah, I mean, he was a generational talent. And now most reports are saying they would be surprised if he wears a Major League uniform again.
Yeah, wasn't too long ago that he was looked at as like the #1 prospect in the game, I think, according to MLB.com for a few years. And to waste that talent away, hopefully the investigation is done, in a way that exposes the truth and holds him accountable. But yeah, not a good situation there in Tampa.
Yep. So yeah, not much else to say there. We're not breaking any news here, but he's got to be a down. And then, last down, just to bring it back home, our good old San Francisco Giants. I'm throwing them in there because they have struggled mightily in August, and even before then, their offense has just really struggled to get going. They were really secure in a playoff spot a few weeks ago. As our friend Say Hey Robbie Lewis likes to say, if the season ended today, they would have been in the playoffs, and now they're going to be clawing and fighting to even sneak in. And I feel like you're on the same wavelength as me. I heard your spot on KMBR. You know, I don't think they're going to get in. Doesn't mean I'm not going to watch them or I'm not going to support them, but I just don't see how. You know, their offense is going to have to do a 180 if they're going to have a shot of getting in.
Without a doubt. And the lineups that they've been throwing out there have been underwhelming in a lot of ways. And you're relying a lot on a lot of youth and inexperience. And, you know, there was a time during this season where when you're down by a run or two, it was almost a guaranteed that they're going to come back in some way, whether it be the middle innings or the later innings. And now you don't have that faith anymore. You simply don't with the offense and the way that they're hitting.
Yeah.
And the one thing that stands out to me, and you could expect these young guys to struggle. And there's been times where, like the Dodgers, for example, they don't need to rely on young guys because they have Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, a lot of these established guys, and they have the chance to sprinkle in the Miguel Vargases and the James Outmans if they want, and they could let them struggle, right? This is a team where you can't really afford your young players to struggle because they're so dependent on them. And it's even worse when you have veterans who just aren't doing anything unless your name is William. I almost said Wilmer Flores. Like, unless you're Wilmer, JD Davis isn't doing anything. Lamont Wade's cooled off, but I think he's heating up as of late. The veterans got to get better. You know, Yastrzemski, you hope you get him back. Haniger, you hope you get him back. But they got to score some runs on the board, and you know, and hope that their pitching could get through the month of September.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's like once they're down by a couple runs now, it's almost like, oh, this one's
you just
done.
don't have that faith anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a game I think it was last week where I think it was Beck came in and they basically let Beck wear it once he gave up a couple runs, and I think he stayed in and gave up like 5 because at that point they were already down like 2 or 3-0, and it just seemed like Kapler was just like, okay, this game's done. We just need to get through it. So let's have Beck eat some innings.
Yeah. And we've had more of those games where, you know, guys are like the designated, you know, it used to be where guys are the designated bulk inning guys. Now there's been more games where guys are kind of having to wear it, like we saw with Alex Wood that one night, than we've seen the entire season. And it's all happened within like a week and a half span. So
yeah, the thing for me, this will be my last thought on it, was, you know, for several weeks people were like, oh, they're just cold, they need to heat up again. They've been one of the worst offenses in baseball, or the worst, for about 2 months now. So that's about half of the games played. So is it they need to wake up and bounce back, or was the first couple months of the season the anomaly and now they're hitting like how they actually are? And so the scary thought is they might be this team and not the team that started the season.
Yep. Only so much you could blame on one single manager. We won't get into that.
Yeah. We could do a whole episode on that and then get yelled at on X for it.
Exactly. Don't say that. Anyhow, Tyler, I think we shut it down again. This was kind of a solid episode. We talked a lot about Ohtani, that situation, playoffs, expansion, or not expansion, relocation, which is unfortunate, but I think we shut it down again.
We did. 30 up, 30 down. Let's go.
Yes. On the 27th one, we had to, wait, does 27 mean anything though? I'm losing track of innings here.
Not really, because 27 immaculate innings would be like 3 games.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe we shouldn't. Yeah. Then if that's the case, we should have stopped counting after 9, and we should have said we threw a complete game. Maybe we did do that. I can't remember.
We'll have to go back. We've got to go back and listen.
Or plug it in there somehow. Anyways, people could follow us on Twitter at @shutdown_inning. Find us on Spotify, YouTube. Go check that stuff out now. And thank you everybody for listening, and have a great day.
That's what's up.